Greetings and welcome on this second Sunday in Lent, the third Sunday in March. Welcome to Bloor Street and St. Matthew's United Church Faith Communities. It's good to have you here as we reflect together on many things. Many things in this Lenten season of holy time, a season, an opportunity to focus on what's become stagnant or routine in our spiritual lives or in our daily lives. In a society of distraction and turmoil and anxiety, Lent offers time for simplicity and mindfulness, and that can be very freeing. And while Lent is normally associated with somber colors, every Sunday, even in Lent, is the Feast of the Resurrection. And so I do not apologize on this Pi Sunday for wearing my rainbow stole, as non-Lenten as it may seem. It is a part of our gathering today that we will be marking Pi Day, specifically Friday, March 14th, 3.14, get it? Was Pi Day. This is Pi Sunday when we join together in expressions of allyship with 2S LGBTQIA plus people with actions that are public, intentional, and explicit. So welcome, I'm glad you are here, whether on Zoom or here in the sanctuary, because what happens as we gather, and as we are met by God in this place, will be different because you're here, because you are a part of it. And as we gather, we recognize the land on which we gather. As we gather to worship, we recognize that we have assembled on land that is sacred, a traditional gathering place for many indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. To show respect for the long history of stewardship and relationship with the land and its creatures, we acknowledge that we gather in the territory of the Huron-Wendat, Petun, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit.
So the Bible reading today, we're first going to sing the psalm. And it is Psalm 27, found on page 753. Jesus was a Jew of the first century, and Jerusalem is for him the center of the world. When he says, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem," he is grieving for a city that he loves. In these words, Luke too grieves for the city that was destroyed in 70 of the Common Era, when Rome crushed the first Jewish revolt. For centuries before and since, the history of the city to which Jesus is headed is complex. That complexity can be felt in the tangled juxtapositions of this scene, such as the warning from the Pharisees of the risk to Jesus from Herod. Despite our perception drawn from other encounters with the Pharisees as opponents to Jesus, this is a genuine act of allyship. The scene has many layers, including the image of the mother hen being both fierce and vulnerable. Our gospel reading is Luke 13, 31 to 35. At that time, some Pharisees approached Jesus and said, "Go, get away from here, because Herod wants to kill you." Jesus said to them, "Go tell that fox, look, I'm throwing out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will complete my work. However, it is necessary for me to travel today, tomorrow, and the next day, because it's impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who killed the prophets and stoned those who were sent to you. How often have I wanted to gather your people, just as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings? But you didn't want that. Look, your house is abandoned. I tell you, you won't see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessings on the one who comes in the Lord's name.'" In this reading, we hear God's voice. God is still speaking. Thanks be to God.
In the beginning, Jesus wasn't moving toward Jerusalem. He was moving away from Jerusalem, preaching and teaching and healing and staying one step ahead of the religious authorities who wanted to keep him quiet. Whenever he healed people, he warned them not to tell anyone about it or tell anyone about him. He stayed just out of reach of the authorities, slipping away from them in Capernaum, Cana, and Nazareth. Then he stopped and turned along the road to Jerusalem. The disciples, we imagine, looked at one another for a minute and then fell in behind, more or less. Eventually, some Pharisees warned him that Herod, who had killed John the Baptizer, is intending to kill him. But he seems not to care. He knows the almost certain consequences that lie ahead. What does hearing a death threat add to that? Jesus' response implies that he assumes these Pharisees have, in fact, come directly from Herod. So he exposes this by giving them a message to take back to Herod. Nice touch. While Jesus brushes off the death threat, he then falls into lament and grief and mourning. Not over Herod's plans for him, not over his eventual fate in Jerusalem or just outside the walls, but over Jerusalem itself. Jesus does not accuse Jerusalem. His words are of lament. And later in the long journey, when he finally comes to a turn in the road and sees Jerusalem ahead on the horizon, Luke tells us he wept over it. One of the important things to come out of historical Jesus studies over the last 100 years or so is the rediscovery and recognition of the utter Jewishness of Jesus. And we should not underestimate the depth of feeling a Jew like Jesus had for Jerusalem. No earthly place was more precious, and no place brought out Jesus' sense of compassion more than Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a dwelling place of God, the place where God's glory will be revealed, God's intentions for the healing and the wholeness of all creation. Jerusalem remains important today. A few years ago, Palestinian Christian leaders issued the Kairos Palestine document, which included these words: Jerusalem is the heart of our reality. It is at the same time symbol of peace and sign of conflict. While the separation wall divides Palestinian neighborhoods, Jerusalem continues to be emptied of its Palestinian citizens, Christians, and Muslims. Their identity cards are confiscated, which means the loss of their right to reside in Jerusalem. Their homes are demolished or expropriated. Jerusalem, city of reconciliation, has become a city of discrimination and exclusion, they write, a source of struggle rather than peace. Jesus' protest and lament over the narrow short-sightedness of Jerusalem is captured in the striking image of God as a hen gathering her chicks under her wings. Now, the Bible is full of metaphors of God, and some of those compare God to an animal, fierce, wild animals like lions and leopards and bears. Even when the Psalms and the prophets speak of taking refuge under God's wings, the wings are those of an eagle, not a hen. And yet here Jesus compares himself to a homely, vulnerable, humble mother hen. But the thing that really strikes me about Jesus in today's gospel is his clarity. His clarity. Jesus is absolutely clear about who he is and the task before him. He is absolutely clear in the choices that he is making. And he's absolutely clear that Herod will not stand in his way. As we saw last week, it is a clarity that began as he struggled with himself in the wilderness. So when the Pharisees stop him on the road and say, "Run, Herod is out to get you," he says to them, "Go tell that fox, look, I am throwing out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will complete my work. It is necessary for me to be on my way today, tomorrow, and the next day." Do you hear the clarity? He doesn't defend or explain himself. He doesn't second guess himself. He doesn't change his mind or turn around. And he doesn't avoid the consequences of what lies before him. He has set his face to go to Jerusalem. That is less about the destination and more about his clarity of purpose and direction. This is not the kind of clarity that gives rise to arrogance, single-mindedness, unwillingness to listen to others, or the self-assurance that we're always right. This is a clarity that gives rise to integrity, to wholeheartedness, and a vision of life that is connected to something larger than and beyond ourselves. The kind of clarity that fosters honesty and authenticity, that strengthens commitment and resolve that promotes wisdom and discernment and enables us to see beyond our own self-interest. What would it be like to live?
Sing amen.
World with that kind of clarity? What if, as churches, we could have that kind of clarity? I don't think it's a lack of information or intelligence that keeps us from clarity. I believe it's a matter of facing the Herod in our lives. Herod as a metaphor for all the things that cloud clarity in our living. Herod could be, for example, the illusion that someone else is in charge of and responsible for our life, or for the institutions to which we give loyalty even after they have betrayed us. Or Herod is the belief that there is some authority out there that knows stuff, and that if we can just find him or her, we'll find the answers to our lives and the solutions to our problems. Or perhaps our Herod is formed of lingering fears, primal wounds, or chronic guilt that determines and drives our lives. The old messages we continue to serve, or fight against, or try to heal. Or it's the part in us that just wants to make others happy, to gain approval and meet expectations, the ways in which we overcompensate and try to prove ourselves. Or Herod is the stuck places in our life where we do the same things over and over and over, and nothing ever changes. Whatever it is, Herod clouds our seeing and causes us to lose focus. Things look fuzzy and vague. We're unsure. And when we lose clarity in life, we lose something of ourselves. The world is complex and I am not. The world is powerful and I am not. I feel overwhelmed and powerless. I get stuck and act as if I have no choices. Clarity isn't about knowing and seeing everything. And it doesn't mean we have all the answers. It's about knowing and seeing ourselves. It's knowing our own heart, our deepest convictions, and what matters most to us. It's about seeing clearly our gifts and our abilities, and at the same time acknowledging our limitations as individuals and, again, as churches. When we can gain some of that kind of clarity, we find a bit more of ourselves. We find direction for our life and choices before us. And most of the time, in that moment, we know what to do. We even find ourselves able to invite others into clarity the way Jesus did. That's how I want to live. And that's how I want Bloor Street and St. Matthew's to live in our future life and ministry. I want us to live with the kind of clarity that lets us go and tell that fox, look, I'm on my way today, tomorrow, and the next day. Herod is out to get him, to distract him, to rattle him. But Jesus continues. He follows his vocation, his innermost calling, and there he finds strength and purpose. His life gains perspective. In Man's Search for Meaning, his book born of the Nazi death camps, Viktor Frankl quotes the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Jesus' sense of identity and purpose enabled him to face his fear of suffering, his fear of abandonment, trusting that his life had meaning and that God's purposes for him and for the world were more enduring than Herod's violence and hatred. We are vulnerable. Of course we are. Jesus was and we are. But vulnerability is not a weakness, a choice, or something we can arrange to do without. Vulnerability is the underlying natural state of our humanity. The desire to be invulnerable is the vain attempt to become something we are not, closing off our understanding of the grief and the struggles of others. Nietzsche does not say those who have a why to live can succeed and prevail with almost any how. Frankl quotes Nietzsche because he wrote, those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how, can press on, can persist, not lose courage or hope, can bear with almost any how. The biblical story that counters this story of Jesus continuing on to Jerusalem despite the danger is the story of the prophet Jonah. Jonah, who did not want to go when called, who had no love for the people he was sent to, and who wanted God's wrath to come down on the Assyrians at Nineveh. Jonah, who was terrified and who sought by extreme means to flee what God had called him to. He could not change his singular view of God as the exclusive defender of the Jewish people. He could not see God as merciful even to enemies. He could not see God's love, which is able to fuel courage in the face of fear, render violence powerless, and that refuses to heed the threats of the powerful. Jonah lacked the clarity of Jesus in that moment, the clarity that enabled Jesus to continue on his way. We as churches today are discovering the need for that kind of clarity. As we look at a world of turmoil and unpredictability and threat, and as we dig deep to replenish the sources of our true calling, our vocation as communities of faith and spirit. Bloor Street this week embarks on an intensive series of consultations involving everyone, to listen to one another, to learn and to sense God's Spirit among us, stirring us to clarity for such a time as this. The journey is hard, and our small acts of justice will not always bear the fruit we would want to see. Jesus' ministry and death did not immediately change the political and social systems he was fighting against. He knew that hearts and minds and destructive systems are not changed overnight. And that's why he has trusted and enabled us to continue what he began for the life of the world. And that life is always coming toward us in 1,000 different ways every moment of every day. God's life never gives up, never lets go of us. And that life is waiting for us to say, "Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord." Not just words of acclamation to be spoken or shouted in a crowd or sung. They are the words of people like us whose eyes and ears and hearts are clear and purposeful and open to what is coming toward us as promise and as new life. May it be so. Amen.